streaming. And streaming. Let's put the link on Twitter. I think you can be heard now on the stream. That's kind of weird. Actually, you're from my desktop audio, so you're a bit quieter. Yeah, I could hear myself from you. Let's see. And our apologies for that little delay. Just setting up the stream, making sure that everything is nice and clean. So for people who are currently joining in, basically the stream, the whole stream was not supposed to be 2 hours long, but it is, and so I decided for the first half to dedicate it to a live commentary on the Fall Sunset Shimmer, because there's a lot of things that people. Well, I've talked a lot about it on Twitter, and I think people would be quite interested in seeing some of the behind the scenes and some of the things that were never people that think that people didn't actually get to see in the project or didn't even notice. Gonna talk a bit about the animation, a bit about the story itself, because there's a lot of things that were behind the scene, the story itself. So yeah, it's actually pretty quiet. Yeah, yeah, good. Actually, the Fall of Such a Shimmer actually started in quite a weird way. It was BabsCon 2017, I think. Basically, a duo cartoonist was invited, and the whole idea of the script came to me when I was at the airport back from the convention. I got the surprise to find out that I was on the same airplane as Richard, one of the two members of Duo Cartoonist. And a realization came to me. I was thinking about, about Sunset Shimmer and a relationship with Celestia, because Webcake was talking to me about trying to make an adaptation of the Fall Sunset Shimmer, the comic. And something came to my mind while I was in the plane. I just realized Celestia doesn't have friends, so something was off. And when I realized that Richard was still in the was taking the same plane and we were at the same layover, I decided to talk to him about the idea, and he agreed with me. It was kind of weird that you'd have Celestia, not having friends, but talking about the virtue of friendship. So the idea of the script came to be. So yeah, the original idea for the beginning of the Fall Sunset Shimmer, when I was planning it, I was thinking, well, it's kind of weird that right after you have Celestia, welcoming the main six and saying, well, we have a lot of things to go through, and so you have Twilight, who's basically asking, well, why invite her and then tell, yeah, let's all go to bed? It's kind of weird. It's kind of uh, it's kind of fishy to think that Celestia would be trying to find a word. She's trying to get Twilight to do something, but the next day, and I was thinking, well, let's start the Fallen Sunset Shimmer, from a different angle. Let's start with when you have Celestia telling all to go to bed, and I was thinking, well, let's start with the wide shot of the castle, the Crystal Castle, which is kind of weird tower. You think about it, but you start with you basically start with the voice from inside, basically just and as a white shot, because I didn't want to have to reanimate the whole introduction scene from Equestria Girls. I just wanted people to know, oh, it's at that time, and then you cut to Celestia, lowering the sun, and then you see a bit what happened and why she waited that night. You have and that's kind of where it starts. And then I realized when I was looking at the script, well, the whole thing is like a minute long, welcoming her. You have Cadence saying hi Twilight. You have a Flash Sentry as a pony who's kind of wondering what the hell's going on. And I was thinking, well, no, I cannot just put an establishing shot for a minute of talking and just go through it. I was thinking, well, yeah, it's gonna make very, very, very slow opening. I was thinking, well, instead, let's do it differently. And it's kind of why it starts the way it does. The original opening shot where you have you just have that crack, and you just have the opening with just with Celestia like that. The whole idea of that shot was inspired by definitely the weirdest movie to think of for inspiring that shot. It's actually inspired from Arrival, where you have the opening shot that just pans down, and you basically just see a window. You have a hint of someone, and that kind of pan, and it's basically just retelling a story. I don't want to give spoilers into what happened in that story, but you basically have a story that's told with a voiceover of a mother losing her daughter. And I was thinking, well, it's kind of like that. You have the story of Celestia who lost her apprentice, and don't really understand at the very beginning what she's dealing with, but just have that shot where she's just looking at the sunset. And then you cut to another shot, basically a whole shot, which is just zooming out. You have Celestia who's just looking down. You don't really understand what's going on, and then you have Luna just going behind her. The original shot was a bit different. Instead of coming from behind her, she was supposed to come out of the frame. It was supposed to be framed in a 3Q, with the camera also doing a movement back. And instead of having Celestia just go and she's saying, I know. Instead of going there, the original line was supposed to be with Celestia asking, she's asking if forgiveness is possible. And she's basically asking to Luna, who's, Luna has asked for her forgiveness back in the days. So you're thinking, oh, is it a parallel between forgiveness with Luna? What is she talking about? But no, just instead the I know. Because she realized, I know, I've made a mistake again. And, you're kind of there just witnessing me messing up a second time. I know I've made those mistakes. And you don't really see the actual, going down. You just see the lights in the back that change completely just the mood of the whole scene. And you have the rim light, which is quite interesting. with that production because I tried a technique that was much different to get these. As it turns out, Toon Boom actually lets me export the just the outline itself. It's not really a feature that's made within Toon Boom, but I realized that with just a node that lets me just override colors, I could simply have the outline and everything else in black, so I could just separate that outline. Fun fact as well, the crown that you get for when she moves her head. Back at the beginning, I was wondering, well, what should I do with the crown? It's a very rigid piece. It's very it has a shape, but I needed to turn. And one of the things that happened was that when I did the when I was starting with Toon Boom, I realized you can import a 3D model, and I realized, well, why not 3D model the crown and then just add an outline, which I did. And also did the same for the chest piece. You can see here just one of clipping because the chest piece has kind of weird the way that Toon Boom handles 3D, but the outline had to be separate. So if I wanted to do that, I needed to have I needed to actually cut it myself. So I had a separate piece with a mask. Just try to put the neck piece over it, and then the outline was generated with a kind of weird plugin. Well, I say plugin, it's a weird node that actually just resizes a piece. So I had that piece with, and then I just had a mask to just try to cut the just an outline color with the that silhouette just expanded. And you don't really see a difference in terms of thickness. You don't realize it, but there's also some inside lines as well to try to blend between the two. And one of the great things with that's one of the great things with Toon Boom. There's just a lot of things. Well, there's a lot of features and a lot of really bad at describing myself right now. But yeah, the let's continue. Yeah, and that shot was a pain just trying to get the animation for her turning her head. I had to do a lot of switches to try to change the layering with the animation. I had to do because you have the hair itself as she turns. I had to switch. Well, I had to switch. Fortunately, she does a quick movement, but I had the hair piece itself that I had to layer over to try to get the because otherwise she would be looking really weird. But then you had the you also had to switch between profile mount because the front mount and the front mount and profile mount are two separate things entirely. I had to key the basically just change a switch with the actual motion. Fortunately, the crown, since it was a 3D model, it was not too hard to actually rotate, but I had to make it to make sure that the angle itself and also the to look at the curve itself, she kind of dips down to make some kind of nice arc. She does that. I also had the whole body to actually rotate. I had to layer the tail as well because the tail was in the back and now it needed to be in the front. And unlike Flash, because with Flash all the layers are kind of created equal, you basically just copy the tail, you put it on the top, and just switch like that. But with Toon Boom, you had nodes, so it's kind of like a spaghetti that you had to replug, or at least put a node with a switch to try to put it at the front. There's some layering in 3D, but the thing is that if you rely on fake layering, basically just rely on something that's farther away but layered in front, you have to actually switch the mode to 2D layering, where it's basically just the order within the composite node. Yeah, it's basically just lots and lots and lots of wiring. But yeah, then she just moves, and it's very subtle, but the movement of a clot involves a simulation. So when she moved, the curtains would actually move as well, but it cuts a bit quick. You have this establishing shot, just the corridors. You have the guard. Someone pointed out that the guards in EQG don't have spears, but then I realized, well, it's kind of weird that the guards would be there without any way of defense except magic. So I added it in. There's some lens flare that was added, but the actual magic of the shot is the light itself. It was a really weird blend of 2D and 3D because I actually use a spotlight, and I actually had the movement in 3D done first, and then I had to match the 2D animation with it. So when he turns his head, you actually have a 3D light source that actually shines on it as he turns his head. You actually feel like, it's real light instead of just facing some white over everything. So you have the shadows are projected here. Yep. And then you have this shot where you have there's a door opening, just to show that Celestia was just looking. And it's kind of weird because she's just spying on Twilight and Spike, but she just wants to make sure everything's fine. You have the crown right in the middle of the frame just to make sure. And one of the things that was one of the things I was working on that I realized too late was not used at all. The door handle, since it was made of metal, I was thinking, well, let's have, let's make sure Celestia reflects properly. Until I realized you don't see it because she's kind of in the dark. The whole shot here, I made a whole 3D model for the room and to realize I just needed it for one shot. Then I needed to add curtains and then I realized, well, I have, mountains at the back. I have but all for just one shot. You don't even get a counter shot. The other shot is done outside. But yeah, you even have Spike reflecting on the ground. That was done pretty easily. Just took the color of the reflection. I just mirrored the whole thing instead of actually just modeling, or at least making the just instead of modeling on kind of doing the animation reflected, I just mirrored it in 2D and looked fine for that angle. Although looking back, it's a bit too sharp because you see the bottom, the reflection. Since it's not perfectly glossy, the reflection gets blurrier as it's getting down. And yeah, the whole thing, how many hours? I was putting maybe 3 or 4 hours a day for like a year and a half. No, actually not a year and a half. I think it was 14 months. There was a lot of because I have a daily job as well, so I was only doing putting some of my spare time. But yeah, there's this shot. You just keep your attention on that shot because it's gonna return later. Basically, just actually one of the cool things, the shadow you get here was done with a technique called normal mapping. It's one of the tools within Toon Boom that actually makes things look 3D. But it's really a pain to get right. You have actually that part here with the reflection, the shine you get in the eye. One of the problems I realized with my previous animations is that shine was never actually the right color when you had the dark scene, because it would just lower the brightness on everything on the rig, until I realized, well, I can just export that shine separately, And if I export that shine separately, I get the I can actually have it independently lit. So you really have the eyes that pop outside the. Then you have then you, basically you just have that. The eyes just feel more, yeah. I wouldn't say more real, just more appealing. They feel like they look like eyes. Yeah, but I mean, even in My Little Pony, the eyes they don't feel very uh, watery. They feel very matte because of the style of the show, and that was one of the things I didn't want to get. And actually, the style of the eyes, instead of going with the style that they have in the movie, I went with a style a bit different. I was inspired by an artist called Momo Mistress, although I think now they're known as Vera Witch. Really, really good pony artist. Might have seen their art or not. Yeah. Well, I think I might link some of the art later, but yeah, because the in the movie the shine itself, instead they just lowered the opacity, look really weird. Yeah. And this shot is just a shot of a door with a crack. There's not much special about it. It's just I had the actual model in 3D to have the basic geometry, and I just did a render and then went in Photoshop. Then I just did some just extruded it to get some depth. Kind of proud of how the crystals turn out, because at first they look really bad, and then I decided to cheat a bit and to get just get some curves to try to get them to punch a bit. And if you look, I actually kind of keyed it, so they would actually kind of not really flicker, but kind of glow a bit to get them to feel like they're refracted a bit. And there's a shot with the mirror. That shot took a forever to render, because every frame had to be a different one, because I really wanted some travel and to kind of make it feel like a POV shot. It's kind of weird because as Celestia's head shows in the shot, her head actually starts to move, because there was the legs moving, but there was not a lot of animation. And it's kind of weird also that the back also gets brighter as we go far closer. And here there's a Utah teapot in the corner as well. It's kind of a joke with the 3D animation community. If you look at a lot of Pixar movies, for example, they're gonna hide a Utah teapot. It's kind of it's a long story, but basically the Utah teapot, I think it was Ed Catmull who was trying to find a challenge to have a 3D object that would have basically have lots of curves, lots of convex and lots of concave parts. It would have a hole. There would be a lot of curves to try to demonstrate their 3D rendering software. And it was, I think it was his wife. I don't remember if it was his wife at the time. But basically, she was just making him some tea, and he just looked at the teapot and he just realized, oh, and that's where he got the idea. And nowadays, you use it to demonstrate Martin Newell. Oh, okay, so I was sure it was Catmull, but then again, they were probably friends, so yeah. But it's kind of funny as well. There's a glow part underneath. When I was working on that, I was thinking, well, kind of weird that there's a counter with lots of precious things, but nothing to make them pop. I was thinking, in museums there would be a light underneath, or I was thinking museums, but jewelry stores. Just try to make them pop and make them more appealing. So I decided to add a light underneath, and yeah. Oh, and there's a fun thing. You don't realize it at the first view, but the frames here, there's nothing there. I was doing the 3D renders and I was realizing, well, let's it needs something with those frames, but I didn't get to take the paintings you had in the show and try to make them more appealing, at least more, you know, something else than just victory. And then I realized too late, well, I don't have the frames. Since they're getting obscured, I cannot just go with the tracking, and I just left them in, and nobody noticed. And yeah, that shot, when you have Celestia's head, that doesn't make any sense with that current framing. Like, there is a spotlight on the top, but if you look at the framing in the next shots, it doesn't make as much sense. And yeah, you have that reveal. You wonder why. And because at the very beginning, you have the shots kind of obscure. You see an eye. And if you look at it on a small screen, you're thinking, oh, maybe it's, you know, you don't see the background and you're thinking, oh, maybe it's sunset on the other side. But then again, you think for a few seconds, it doesn't make any sense. She's coming out of the mirror. And it's kind of funny because in the movie, they don't really use the mirror that much as, you know, look into themselves. They see it as a portal, but when you have Twilight who's looking at the mirror, she's not looking back at herself that much. So it was really interesting to see that, you know, in that I could have that mirror, because the tagline of the movie was, well, the tagline of the short was Celestia reflects on her past. So having things that reflect in it was, you know, it really helped. Yeah. Can you talk again? Oh, okay. You cannot be seen. Try again. Oh, now you can be heard. Actually, let me check if. Pretty. Oh, okay. No, I see. It's not that. It's cannot be heard at all because I think the audio mixer properties.
Having fun with audio mixing.
Oh, now you can be heard. Okay.
Okay, now I can be heard.
Okay, so for some reason my desktop audio was not responding right. But yeah, now you can be heard. Let's continue. But yeah,
Yeah, okay, I just listened to myself on stream.
wait. Okay. So let's continue.
Alright.
Oh, fun fact, there's particles, as you can see. It's actually just stock footage of particles. And the shot that ended up in the... that shot was kind of a pain to get the reflection, and if you look at the reflection, it cuts the hoof as well.
Oh, yeah.
That's actually a matte painting with some projection. Basically just to get some depth instead of going with just 3D render. Because the whole render in the previous shot just took forever.
Yeah.
There's some artifacts. You don't really see them on a normal view. But if you look at it blown on a 4K screen, it's just obvious. So, and yeah, you get the particles closer to the actual light source and everything else. Looking back, I should have tried to get them more, because even though that's very bright here, the particles would still kind of reflect. Yeah. Oh, and there's some artifacts as well from the way that I did the lighting. I had a sphere that would project light, but basically projecting light without casting shadows, so they wouldn't be obscured by the walls. To get some kind of get the floor to kind of have some crazy reflections, look cool. But yeah, and yeah, you have the outline. It was also generated with the outline technique that I had previous shots. And then the one part that was the most interesting was here with the water. Lots of people were wondering about the water because it really feels like water. The whole thing was actually a real simulation. It was not really water; it was more clot that was put to be springy. So you really feel like the ripples would actually ripple on the sides. It was kind of inspired by what the Matrix did with that one scene with the mirror.
Yeah.
And then you have a reveal with Sunset Shimmer.
What are you doing here?
And that doesn't make any freaking sense. There is no way that if she's looking at that side when she's, she's looking at a mirror, because that one shot is a POV shot. Kind of. It's a POV shot until the point she turns her head. There is just the point of view of where she used to look at. But she's looking at the side within the mirror, but it cuts to looking at the side like it was not a mirror. Doesn't make any sense, but then you realize later that, if I had made it so it made sense, it wouldn't flow right with the other shot. So I just kept it in. And it kind of helps to not make it feel right in terms of continuity, but in terms of real physics. So you realize that it's not supposed to feel normal. And you have that one shot. You have Celestia talking with Sunset, and she gives that.
Well, you left the door open, and the sunrise is getting late.
And you heard a line that was for that. Instead of going and saying that the sunrise was getting late, she was saying, "Oh, our class is getting late." And was thinking at first, well, you have Sunset. She's very interested by, being good at magic. But I was thinking, it was actually, I think I was talking with Webcake about that idea. I was thinking, well, she is very interested in, being her number one assistant. And she was thinking, well, let's have, instead of saying, well, our class is getting late, let's have Sunset say, well, the sun is getting late. So you have that scene and you understand, right, oh, okay, it's that night. And why would Sunset be that interested in Celestia being late to raise the sun? So you see a bit the idea of, you see a bit why she's interested in raising the sun that early. And she also, you kind of see why Celestia would be late, because she's kind of interested in the mirror. And I couldn't actually show why she was interested in mirror at that time, but I was thinking, why would Celestia would keep a mirror to another world? It's a world where Luna was never banished. It's definitely a human world. It's not the same Luna, but she's looking at a world that has completely different history. And since she has her regrets with Luna, because you don't see it very clearly, but a lot of things that are in that room are related to Luna. In the very back, there's actually a painting of Luna back from Luna's determination.
Yeah.
And even the banners are also related to the moon. The color palette is very blue, although it's that night, so it makes sense. And you have Sunset, who's shown with very warm lights to kind of fit her colors as well. So when she's coming, she's there. And she's just reminding Celestia, the one thing you're supposed to do, let's do it. And she's just walking, and you have her horn. It's kind of funny because to get her horn, I had to actually do the animation for Sunset first. And then
So, what's so special about this?
Then basically when she moves, I had to use her animation as a stencil for the 3D scene in the back. Put her horn as a point light, and as she turned her head, she would basically cast shadows on herself with the rest of the scene. And you have Celestia as well casting shadows. It's not as it's not the same kind because I used a 3D model for her. Basically, I had a 3D model that kind of looked like Celestia to stand in. So when she moved, and you don't see it the first time, but when she moves, the light actually stops before her, and then you get the basically just to highlight, and you still have Celestia, who's yeah, you basically have her who's still very dark, so you keep the focus on sunset, and you kind of see at that time why you see why sunset is already very curious when she's very young, and it already shows why she's oh, and also the cutie mark's kind of weird because the leg that was looking back, yeah, I should have fixed that, but that happens. Then a moment where she touches the mirror, that kind of strikes her curiosity, and you see those ripples more clearly. Why there's why the ripples will also get the also ripple with the side of the mirror. I could have used the one of the ripple effects in After Effects to just do those ripples easily, but they wouldn't actually have got those corners properly. And then you see just the magic when you get the yeah, basically when she grabs her hoof so she doesn't yeah, basically she doesn't go in the mirror. Get those ripples. Oh, funny things is the ripples were there. I didn't have to actually do the lip sync for her because her mouth would be that obscured. And yeah, one thing that's interesting is the magic on the horn. One of the things is there was the artist that did the magic in the movie. He did it all by frame, and I was thinking, well, pretty cool. I should try to do that until I realized all the work that would be done. Until I realized that there's a plugin called Saber that would kind of give pretty cool glow on objects. I needed to actually manually do the curve and track it to the horn, but it just looked very glowy and very good. So I just used it, and then I copied it for the normal one, which is actually just the animation but darkened. But since it's the corner of the screen, you don't really pay much attention.
I'm not a highly
And then you have the scene with Shadow where you get the same kind of color. A lot of people were wondering why it was green instead of red, but a lot of people don't realize that the magic changed to red after Rainbow Rocks. While if you looked at Equestria Girls, their magic was still green. I wonder why it did that change, but I'm not aware of the show. Oh, and in the back, all the books are the very same texture. But yeah, the whole thing was just a matte painting with just the mirror itself that just changed. Just with a very basic animation. I'll talk later about that animation because it returns, but the idea that they had an hourglass for noting the day and the night actually came from Luna's determination. Was thinking, well, they need a way to be able to track when is the day and when's the night. And I was thinking, well, they cannot use the sun because they're the one using the sun for that. So let's change it so they use hourglass to find the time. And then you have the animation with the walk cycle. It's kind of funny because the animation that you have for Celestia was actually done in Flash, while the animation for Sunset here is actually done in Toon Boom. And the reason why is that I had a walk cycle for Celestia that fit the style, so I didn't want to have to reanimate it. And since it was a shadow, you don't really have to worry too much about it. And then you have the shot of Canterlot, which is actually a matte painting, but extruded. I just added some fake Z depth out of, because the whole thing was just a 3D model that I painted over. I added some textures, for example, to get some kind of cliffside. I added some texture for some brick. I had to do some patches because the projection for those textures was kind of weird. You also had the water that I had to do that. before. And since it was based on 3D model, it just used the depth of the 3D model to give that fake depth, the camera movement, 2 birds, just to give some more life, and also to take, oh, I need to look at this. You cut to the 3D shot. And that's actually the same 3D model, but with some improvements to make it stand out. Then you had just a walk cycle that was also reused when she just grabs at it. And in the back, I realized that too far, it kind of looked weird, so I had to grab back the towers and do an OpenGL render of that. So the front tower is done with the ray tracer, but the back towers are done with the most basic of 3D renderers. And with just nice rotate.
Lead the eye.
Yeah, well, it's not exactly to lead the eye, but I realized too late. Well, there's no depth in the back without those towers, because I was thinking, well, maybe they're gonna be obscured, gonna be more to the left, no, to the right, I mean. But then I realized, well, let's try to get some, and you get those, and then you cut, and it's really nice because when you cut from here, right next to the same thing in the same frame, and that's also a 3D render, with the front towers being done with the most basic of renderers, with the very back being just a projection. Basically, it's a matte painting that was done with by taking 3D model and painting over. You don't actually see the sun; I just put a lens flare in it. But you have Celestia who's implied to be there. You have Sunset is looking at that, and that one shot, that one part was not really part of the original script, but I wanted to just imply that that Sunset was very interested in magic, and she's interested in becoming more like she's interested in being more like Celestia, so she's trying to do the one thing she's doing. And if you look back at the Journal of Two Sisters, it took 6 unicorns just to raise the sun, so her expectations were pretty high. So you have the shot that just keep following her, and you have the sun as well being. You don't realize really quick that quick, but the sun actually stops moving while she lets Sunset actually do the just raise the sun. And as she says,
Not quite there yet, son.
there's some subtle movement of the shadows here, because she's just taking over. Another matte painting shot, and here you have some ponies just walking. It's all done in Flash. It's walk cycles I had with ponies, and I since that shot was one of the shots that needed to be done quick, instead of actually making lots of ponies, I just use U-shift to get the ponies to look different. And then you have the School of Magic. You also have, it's kind of weird because there's no actual layout you see in the show with that. There's a library, there's a School of Magic, there's some of the buildings which are supposed to be next to the School of Magic, all around the same place. And I was thinking, well, let's have that. Let's have all the magic related stuff there, right underneath the level of the royalty, where you have all the places where you had the coronation and the royal events, like the wedding. So you have one level for royalty, one level for magic students, and underneath you have all the common people, and you also have here the tree where Twilight was reading the book in the pilot, with all the river and all the and the houses. Some of them are just cubes. And you have the shot where you have it's based on real life. You probably had the experience where you had group projects and you had teachers saying, yeah, you should all get along, get some teams, join, and you try to get to be with people, and then you realize alone. It's pretty sad, but you know, you realize, well, yeah. Oh, and you have the two moon dancers, one next to the other. They're coming back later, but I realize in the comic there is a moon dancer is much different. But she's not referred to moon dancer; she's just implied to be moon dancer. So I was thinking, well, there's nothing that says that both cannot be existing at the same time. So let's make the two, you know, and instead of naming her Moon Dancer, she's named Moon Chaser in the files. But yeah.
You should try to make some friends.
But why?
And you have the shot where you have Celestia in the shadow, and one of the reasons why you don't see Celestia that much, Celestia was causing a lot of trouble because of the rig that I had for her, just the main was taking forever to render. So I realized, well, let's go with just shots where she's in the shadow or shots where she's implied to be there. Because shots in the shadow, I wouldn't have to worry about outlines because they were just generating outlines would take forever to render. And I could also hide some of the body parts and have to worry too much about animating her to basically just have basically could have Sunset just be the one just driving the drama. Yeah.
Why?
Because friends bring happiness.
And it's also pretty strong as well because since she's just it's just a shadow, she's very imposing. Oh, and one of the funny things, if you look at those two stained glasses, in the show you see one of the moon and one of the sun, but since this was before the return of Luna, both are about the sun. It's also really helped with the color palette because it's very warm. You just see the light, just very imposing. So so just filling it with warm colors really made it more dramatic, at least for the context of it.
But I'm happy when I do magic.
But why do you do magic?
And that shot with just her walking, and there's also the just walking. That shot is also flash animation. I just rotated the head. It's also kind of weird. It's kind of funny because that shot was also done without the ray tracer. Since I didn't use the ray tracer, there was no reflection in the ground. So instead, all of the ground is just me putting the assets under the ground, making the ground just transparent, just having her walk.
To do good
And you
things.
don't really pay attention to it, but.
You need to make some.
Oh, and there's a glitch that shows there's some tiny mistakes here. It's not actually a glitch of the well, it's not a glitch. It's an oversight because the floral pattern, because I was using that matte to extract the shadows that would be cast on her. The problem with the floral pattern is that some of the floral pattern would be caught by the shadow. Well, be cut as a shadow. So even though I had the normal map to bend it, and you know I was trying to get it to look real, I didn't catch that one. So you don't really pay much attention to it, but it's there.
Friends, Sunset.
And
Right.
there's kind of a weird, awkward walk cycle. It was really face palming because in that shot you go from her walking from the right to the left to a shot walking to the left to right. Kind of makes sense, you know, story wise because she changed her mind, so you can go from one to the other. But it's kind of jarring.
Yeah,
How can I make
but the
myself
jarring
some
kind of
friends?
helps
Yeah.
accentuate the mood you're trying to set.
Oh, also funny thing, there's a bridge here that leads to nowhere. Like I didn't realize until too late. If I had to fix it, I would add a door so you'd feel, you know, you're going from one tower to the other. But yeah, I left it in.
You talk
It
to
must be
them,
for the
you
roofers.
make jokes.
Yep. And the tree that was there at first in the pilot.
You have fun. You do things.
And
together.
this one was the last shot I animated for the whole project.
Become friends with them.
Kind of why Sunset looks a bit weird in that shot, because you know I only had that one shot left to do. So yeah, it's not exactly rushing. It's just that I had a deadline and I had to do that at some point.
Yeah.
Kind of funny because Celestia is there. You have Sunset who's just trying to hide herself, but Celestia is kind of drawing attention to her. Oh, and there's some nice ripples in the water that I added in that you don't really notice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's got awkward. Turning and she's thinking, no, please, no. You know when you have a parent who wants to do something, but kind of making you feel awkward? It's that kind of feel. And she gets getting angry. She's running away, and it's kind of funny because she's running away from the light. So it's a bit too symbolic even for me. Like, it was not intended. I just realized, yeah, she's running away. And there was a one shot with 2 guards, and I really like the matte painting in that one. There's not a lot of animation, but
But why?
there's some nice depth to some particles.
You want to
And since they're talking, some kind of echo, I didn't have to worry about lip syncing them.
fail again?
I don't think any pony would be incapable of making friends.
But what am I doing wrong? I'm acting nice. I try to be friendly and nothing works.
You're telling me you can figure out the fundamentals of magic?
There's not much talk about that one shot.
Hard for you?
Except that's a POV with a very awkward angle. It's kind of interesting that there's you have Sunset be right in front of a light source, so you have the hoof going with the darkness, but there's not much more to it.
Is this in order?
Yes, and until you figure it out, I don't want you in the library.
Oh, fun fact, that one shot here, the one special thing about that shot is that I made it back when it was kind of held, not exactly held, but the Red Cross had to help us because the complex that was living at, the electricity went out and the heating went out during the winter, so the Red Cross had to come to help us. And when they did, they basically just used they sent us to the hotel, so I had to try to continue working in the false sense chamber on my laptop while I didn't have all the files, and was thinking, well, what can I do? There's not much productive stuff I can do. Still, I realized that there's that one shot I had the files for. I could just do the compositing, so I ended up just doing compositing on my tiny laptop in a hotel room. While I was just waiting for the electricity at the apartment to come back, so I could actually have access to my desktop. So yeah. And then I realized that since I did it on my laptop on another version of the After Effects, it wouldn't be I couldn't open it. So I was really glad that I got it right the first time, because doing fixes would have been impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will you be my friend, Moon Dancer?
And the head movement she's doing in that one shot is mirrored the one shot where she turns her head. Even though I actually reuse it later in that one scene. I think that's the one scene that's kind of feeling shoehorned in. I feel bad about it, but that kind of happens with productions where you have to, you have to go with it. But the one shot where you have Sunset basically showing she's really bad at making friends.
I don't see why you couldn't become friends with the princess's
Yeah.
favorite student. I can get you some books or spells you wouldn't get anywhere else. Why not?
I'm really feeling bad because the one background with all the arches, when you have a hallway with Canterlot, I only had the opportunity to use it for those shots. I was supposed to have a shot where she was running down those hallways, but then I realized the shot would be really, 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 really long, because it was the one shot in POV, which was running to the mirror. It happens.
What? You don't have friends either.
And you have the shot where she gets caught, which personally, if I had to do it again, I would probably try to extend the one scene before where she was trying to make friends to show her struggle. But at least one thing I'm glad is that she hints that she's she's still using the library even though she's banned. So there's that part is interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird because yeah, originally she was supposed to be basically she was supposed to be hiding, she was supposed to hide her identity to still be able to get to the to still be able to go to the library without Celestia's Celestia's consent. And yes, that happens. There are scenes that you would have wished to have done but couldn't be done. But at least still feels like there's some progression. You have the glow that you get from Sunset Magic as she's using it as light source. Kind of weird that she would use her magic, green magic, so it would give a green light source, but it also helps to make it feel different from the light, the natural light. And one shot where she gets caught, and if you pay attention, you get Star Swirl here, and you get plans from the magic mirror, and you get her shadow, which doesn't make as much sense when you realize in the previous shot that the sun was actually shining at a different part. But it actually helps to see those two in the same frame, even though it's just her shadow.
Here,
Princess Celestia?
I made it clear that
Yeah.
you're not allowed here, and you have disobeyed me.
I told you I couldn't.
Oh, and there's some people who were commenting at how the sun was going fast in that shot. It's pretty funny. The whole reason why the sun was moving that fast is because in the shot before and the shot after, I realized that the sun was changing position, so I needed to motivate that change in a way.
Try.
Try what? I tried everything you told me.
Did you?
You're a hypocrite! You don't even have friends!
And if you look at the shot before where she's reacting, the whole shot was added in later because I realized that it needed to, I needed to have Celestia react. So I basically just cut that one shot. Well, instead of being two shots, it was just one continuous shot. So getting those two shots to, basically cutting it to get a reaction really helped to just give it some more punch. And the teleportation effect is actually a smoke simulation that was used. Basically, I had a 3D rig that kind of looked like Sunset that I made, and I just set it as smoke emitter, and I just added some just a radial emitter to just make it look like it popped. And as it popped, you got that kind of teleportation effect. You just had some green glow and all. Oh, fun fact also about that, I also used the same renderer for that one that didn't support reflection. So, but instead of having a reflection as the basically just copying and just mirroring, it was actually two renders. It was were put one where I basically just mirrored the whole camera. Yeah, shiny floors are a pain with those renders. And this is the longest render. The longest shot to render of the whole project, where I had Celestia just walking. She's all done in Flash because I had that walk cycle and I needed it early in the production because I knew it would take forever. But I had God rays, I had refraction, reflection, just to get that shot where the mirror was, the hourglass would be rotated. And there's a funny thing, as the mirror is rotated, you see the basically see all the sand that is in there, and there's actually no sand in the scene. I just put basically I just put the particle emitter in a surface. It was completely outside of the whole scene. Just added it in After Effects. The shape itself is just a whole block that I had some displacement. And when you actually had the rotation, I actually just had one where the top was cut here, one where the top was cut here. I just switched between the two with the since the whole thing was getting obscured. I also had a matte just to get the magic effect. That's it. And then you get the one shot with the 180. The whole thing took forever to do. I actually had to do the 180 of the camera first with the placeholder with just a 3D model that would be a good idea of what Celestia would look like. And then I had to make the 2D rig in Toon Boom and match the movement manually. And the Canterlot you see in the back is all just a matte painting I had projected on a sphere, with some very, very basic towers in the front to kind of give a feel of perspective. Yeah. And if you, fortunately the animation of the head kind of looks a bit weird. But I thought, well, people are going to be more interested in the movement itself. And you don't actually see the sunset in that shot. You just have the lens flare that I tracked to the movement. I just dimmed down the colors and I put some stars showing up. And
What have I done?
yeah. Here's that one shot where she's just flying, and it's just there's just way too much symbolism. She's literally flying on top of her mistake, the mirror in the moon. And then you see for the first time, at first I was not planning to use that tower as the one place where Sunset would live. I was thinking actually having her live within the castle of Canterlot, but then I realized, well, I need a shot to have her walk too. And then you'll see a bit one of the reasons why. There's a little light source here. I had to cheat it to have some shadow, to have just imply she was there. Just see how, sad her whole place was. And then you get the shot where she's talking. And that part was actually one of the very first things I already set. Originally, the idea was that she was still knocking a door, and the door just slightly opened. And you just see her shadow here. So she's taking, well, the door is, she let the door open, so maybe she's open to try to talk to me. Is very wrong. But then she's talking, and she's talking about her mistakes. And one of the things at the very beginning, the production I wanted to have was just a crack in the wall, and you just have, well, not crack in the wall, crack in the door. You just have, you just have Celestia just talking through that crack. And I was thinking, when you have, when you have a scene of someone talking through a door and just see that crack, there's not much, but that's just showing she's kind of opening, but that's it. I wanted to keep that in. It really helped as well because I could have her talk without worrying about the animation and just worry about the drama itself.
I don't know what got to me. I should have understood you better.
And then you have the music that just kicks in.
I
So you think, oh, it's probably one of those, you have that music that just goes and you, oh, maybe something happy is gonna happen, even though you already know something bad's gonna happen.
was helping, but I was not. I don't know anything about friendship.
And she's pushing her head to the door like that
Maybe
because
you
she's,
can get a
and
second.
there we go. door just opens. And it's empty. And you have the you can slightly hear heartbeats in that scene. And those heartbeats just become hoof steps. And that's the one shot where I was supposed to have her run for longer. But when I was doing some tests, I had a shot where she was flying through the corridors. Basically, the idea was, well, if she's faster flying, she's probably just not gonna care about running that much. She's gonna just fly. And as she realizes that it's a bit too low as a ceiling, she's just running. But then I realized, well, it's gonna be too long for the shot, and I don't want to get too much that. And then you see the guards and you see some rocks, so they were really shaken up. And those guards are actually just 3D models with outlines. And their heads are obscured. One of the reasons is that the head that I had for the model was not very well textured, so I just tried to just keep it in a place where you had the head be as obscured as possible. So, and the fact that you don't see their head, you kind of see a bit that I'm trying to find the right words. You know, it just sucks their life out. Like they're saying something, but you just hear the pain. You don't see their face as well. Just think of the pain they have. And the fact that you don't see their body that well also kind of helps, because you're thinking of the worst. Kind of like how horror movies would often just obscure things. So you just assume the worst at any moment. Which is why horror movies that happen during the day are more rare. They exist, but they're not... And there's a shot with the mirror. And the original shot was supposed to be different. The idea was that I was supposed to start... basically just show the corridor. You have Celestia's thing. And as she arrives, you just zoom out and you see that it's all from the mirror. And and then you see just Celestia's face in it. But instead I decided to change a bit. So you don't see it very clearly. Maybe Sunset is there. Get closer, and then you have a reflection. And as you see a reflection that's basically mirroring the previous shot, you basically realize Sunset cannot be there. There is not even a ripple. She gets angry, and then she goes. You basically get to see her anger. And I still cheated in that POV, because if it was a POV, she'd be looking down. And you know, it happens when you create a film. You're gonna cheat. You're gonna cheat a lot. You don't really think too much about that, so you don't worry too much. But it's one of those things. And you also have the outline. Basically, just have more her silhouette than her body. You can still see her face and all, but it's more the silhouette with getting some more. It was not too lit. You just really saw her most basic features. So it was feeling better in that scene. And since the facial expressions are more obscured, you would really make them punch more. So yeah, and then you have the shot where she and then you cut with the one shot with the hoof. And you can hear on the back, "My crown, she's got my crown!" Which came from Equestria Girls. And then you get the ripple. Gets the ripple. And pretty dark when you think visually. But she turns her head to Twilight. Basically just asking Twilight, well, you've made friends. Go and try to get... I'm sure you can help her. Hey. You have Twilight, basically, you have the push-in, and you have the one shot where she goes from here. You have the saddlebags that were for Luna. You don't see Luna and Cadence in that shot. It was very crowded, and I wanted to focus more on Twilight and her friends, and Celestia. So she turned her head, and there are some glitches with Celestia. You don't pay attention to her too much, but her head glitched a bit. Get the ripple. Turns her head just like in the movie. Although in the movie they actually cut to a close-up but since the whole shot was just it has a single take, I decided to just even hair like that. She turns her head, goes, then you cut ripples. And some point, people pointed out that reflection would be wrong in that shot, but if I actually went with the other reflection, the actual mirrored shot would feel a bit jarring. And then you get Spike, just like in Equestria Girls, where it just runs. You have the main 6A, Spike, no! They're wondering, well, what do we do? What do we do? And it just has Celestia saying, yeah, I think it's fine. Because the whole idea was, you know, Twilight made a friend that was, you know, it was such a strong friend that he was willing to, you know, he was willing to get himself in trouble just for her. And she was thinking, well, that's good. I have a friend who made, I have a student who made lots of friends. So I trust her. She's going to be able to help. She's basically going to be able to help Sunset. And you got to that shot. Kind of weird, but try to. There's a few differences with the comic. I was thinking at first, well, I wanted to make a more faithful adaptation of the comic, and then I realized, well, most comic book adaptations aren't that faithful. They take some of the ideas of the comic, and I was thinking, well, yeah, let's go with it. I didn't want to contradict the comic either, but I really wanted to at least have, you know, something that would work as an animation.
Yeah.
And the fact that beginning of the end was you know, was different like that, try to connect more to the movie than what the comic was doing, I thought was more interesting. And then you get the title, which is actually it's a 3D title that was pretty interesting because it's actually just fired. It's in front of the, well, I say in front, but it's just the real-time renderer with just an HDR with some fire on one side and nothing else on the other. I just rotated it to have the fire and just get it to feel, keep the fire that you some people just imagine with Sunset, because you know there's lots of things with fire you can think with Sunset, like the passion is burning, the anger is burning, the sun itself is burning, and it just stops. There's a lot of things that with that project that I mean, the project itself took a lot of time because it was my first experience with Toon Boom. There's a lot of techniques that I took from Luna's determination that I was really glad I could actually improve. But the idea of doing a project with lots of, with lots of backgrounds, with lots of not a lot of characters, but lots of events happening, because it's still 10 minutes of animation, and actually managing to do it was quite a challenge. I had to cheat a lot to try to get it done because I was the only animator. I was actually had someone who was suggesting someone else to animate, but then we realized we're not using the same tools and not the same techniques at all, so it was really tough to try to get things done. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges to get those projects done. There's a lot of cheating and trickery. So yeah, that's kind of a breakdown of the 10 minutes. Lots of I'm pretty bad at explaining myself, but getting that project done was a lot of work. There's a lot of things, for example, all the music from Radiark and Seventh Element that really helped to get it to push, to just, I wouldn't say push the drama, but make you feel what the intensity of the drama was supposed to be like. it was really tricky because one of the things I wanted to have was a feel. I wanted it to feel more modern in terms of music because you think of Sunset Shimmer, you think a lot of modern things because she's from Equestria Girls, so she's really associated, with her. She's a gamer. She likes technology, and but the thing is that since it was set in the past, well, not just in the past, but in Equestria, I couldn't have guitars. I couldn't have, I had to have something that felt more orchestral. So it was really, I was really glad that the two managed to do something that just felt right without having to rely on that. Just Webcake and a Chloe, just their performance as well. Because one of the things that really pushed the project when Webcake just came in, she was because she does a great Sunset Shimmer. I was thinking, well, I have a voice just sounds like the real sunset, but also acts like the real sunset. Like one of the things I was really worried about was with the acting because a lot of people think that voice acting it's a lot about how the characters sound, but it's also how the characters act. Like it's literally voice acting. So to try to get Sunset to just sound, to just sound, at the very beginning, she was trying to find the right words. She wasn't exactly arrogant. She was just very, very, she was thinking she was the best. So I needed someone who was capable of doing that. Within Chloe, just when she voiced Celestia, to just voice her struggle at explaining how to make friends, because let's face it, Celestia isn't the best at making friends. So to have her voice, because one of the things she gives as advice, which is really bad advice, but to make it sound like she was giving bad advice instead of making it sound like she was giving good advice, and I really don't know what kind of good advice are. It was really tricky because she needed to have confidence. She needed to have confidence, but also struggle. So it's a lot of subtleties with voice acting. When I was doing the recording sessions with Anna, I ended up doing the sunset on my side, trying to respond to her, try to get the just the intensity. And yeah, it was really tricky to get the two to just sound like they were talking to each other because I had to record the two separately. Anna just happens to be in a completely different time zone, so yeah, pretty tricky when you go with voice acting with projects. And also, it was kind of funny because there was a scene where you have a guard that's just screaming "ah," which is a inside joke with Chalice. Every time he sees Sunset Shiver, he just screams "ah." And I was thinking, well, let's I'm gonna have a scene where I have a guard who needs to scream "ha," so you'll be that one. And you did, pretty funny. So it's kind of weird because putting a joke in a dark scene like that is kind of weird, but it's more of an inside joke. So when you don't know the reference, you're just thinking, oh, someone's screaming "I" in pain, trying to get help. So you're not too distracted. Not like thinking of The Last Jedi when you have a scene where you think it's a spaceship is just landing, but you just realize it's Niran. It's just thinking, well, it's kind of weird to put a joke in that place. Until you realize, oh, it's a reference to Hardware War, which was released in 1978, which was actually, yeah, it was a short film that was made to parody Star Wars, but just with hardware tools. It was trying to make references to, but yeah.
Yeah.
You got any questions?
Let's see here. What's going on? Yeah, I'm not seeing many questions, more just statements talking about stuff.
I was thinking the whole thing would take like 30 minutes, but with all the rambling, it took over an hour, so kind of surprised. I was thinking, well, if I have time, I could do one for Luna's determination, but I think I'll do that another time. Focusing on the False Sunset Shimmer was quite interesting.
Yeah, I didn't see many big questions. A lot of spam.
I wonder if there's a...
Who's Sunset? Like, who played Sunset in this?
A Webcake.
Okay.
She was my first choice because she was the one suggesting the project in the first place. Originally, she wanted something that's closer to the comic, but then other ideas came in, and one of the reasons why I decided to be to go a bit different from the comic was thinking, well, the comic already exists, so just doing a straightforward adaptation would be kind of boring. It kind of wouldn't really be surprised by anything. So adding in the getting something that was closer to an original story with some ideas from the comic was more interesting to me, and I could also bring up the idea that maybe Celestia was doing some contradictions by asking her to make friends, and then you'd also have the ideas that since she's nearly immortal, for her to try to make friends pretty tricky. So yeah.
Okay. Where's the beginning of Harmony?
It's still in production. It took more time than expected because one of the things I was busy with Anthology 7. I was also busy with damn it. Trying to find a word. We had multiple animation project, multiple animator project with Prince whatever.
Yeah.
And it took a bit more time, and then I ended up with doing 2 projects in parallel. So it's coming. There's one of the toughest scenes is almost done, so I have to just finish the final arc. Well, and yeah, it's a bit tricky because there's a lot of new tools I've been experimenting with, and yeah, it's mostly just trying to get the best out of it. And also, I have a project in parallel about Starlight Glimmer that I've been working on. It's pretty tricky to get it to look right. So yeah, it took a bit of time with that as well. And yeah, I was kind of worried about the beginning of Harmony because it's kind of a prequel to Luna's Determination in a way. So not only do I need to make it fit with Luna's Determination, but also, I need to do it right, because if not, people, if not, it's gonna look weird. There's lots of good things. For example, some of the locations that I return to that have much better visuals, in part because I just got better with the tools. I had to create a whole village for one of the shots, and yeah, one of the shots, like I said one, but there's 2 shots where you see the whole village. So you think about that, it's kind of a waste, but it's also just the fact that you see it as a whole. It already gives a lot of scale for the whole thing. Just it doesn't just feel like 2 characters walking somewhere. And yeah, it's one of those tricks. It's one of those tricky things that you have to deal with when you do environments. You need to give a sense of scale, but if you go too big, people will be in disbelief. And if it goes too small, well, people will be underwhelmed. So yeah, that was one of the tricky parts with the Starlight Glimmer project. One of tricky parts is that since it's in Ponyville, I need to keep the scale of Ponyville we know in the show, but also I need to make it, feel big. I need to make it, and since it's all in 3D, I cannot just cheat like what they do in Ponyville with, just making it look like whatever they want it to look like, depending on the shot. Like you have the wide shots for Ponyville's like 10 houses, but you have wide shots where it's like 300. Yeah, pretty tricky. Actually, I guess I could show you. Yeah, actually, let me open up the 3D Maya scene. Hopefully it doesn't crash.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. One of the things, if I click on the ground, it's gonna crash, so I'm warning you.
It's been a long weekend.
Yep. Oh wait, it's still the weekend.
Yeah, that it is. And Minty's opening it up. We're almost there.
Oh right, wait. Oh right, it's not. Yeah, I gotta be careful with Maya. When you set projects, you have to set the project and then you open it. So open and keep in mind the mountains are really not final. I wanted to get something that just felt, kind of. I just wanted to feel cartoony because it would be really annoying. But I felt like I wanted to keep at least some of the neat features of the mountains we already had. So, yeah.
Okay.
Gonna take a while to load because there's 300 houses. And
so
like
just a couple.
well, the thing is that since it's Arnold stand-ins, it's not gonna take the same time to render. It's not like I have 300 houses in total. It's that I have 300 instances of houses.
Okay. It's just the amount of it.
Yeah, but it's still 300 to deal with, so still have to worry about the position. So if I have like, I don't know, 40 houses, 40 different models of houses, well, yeah.
That's even more to deal with.
Slowly loading. Oh yeah, and I gotta be careful with the ground, because if I click on it, it's gonna crash. I still have no idea why.
Huh.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, I think I'm gonna have to figure it out.
Yeah.
There we go. So this is a model of Ponyville with Canterlot in the back. I tried to get it to be kind of a relative distance. Try to keep the scale itself.
Yeah. How detailed is Canterlot in this one?
There's less details if I focus on it. It's based on the 3D model I used for the False Sunset Shimmer. But for example, the inside of Canterlot, there's no houses because from that distance you wouldn't see them. Yeah, there's still. It's made to look good from a bottom angle.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, when you come back to Canterlot, to Ponyville, all the houses, all the trees. There's actually going to be a lot more trees because the well, I mean, it it's there's still there's still a lot of well, there's the Everfur Forest, for example, which contains a lot of trees. We're not really gonna focus on it, but just let's make sure that it exists. But I think some trees is definitely gonna have some more life to it. So yeah, there is also the Castle of Friendship. There's the School of Friendship as well, or next to each other. There's lots of there's all the rivers. There's the bridges between the rivers. It's kind of weird because there's the town hall, but the town hall is not in the middle of the city. It's right in it's kind of in the corner. You have a corner that has more houses. And I was looking at the place where basically the place where you have the Golden Oak Library, which is supposed to be here. Center of interest. So if you just rotate around here, it's the view that we would get. You'd get a view of Canterlot, but everything else is kind of a boring view of the whole thing. Like that. And yeah, there is 80 light sources. There's even light sources for Canterlot to make it feel like there's life in that there as well. It is seen from very far away, but I think it will be pretty important. It's kind of tricky as well because since there's a lot of houses, basically I want a lot of well, I want a good establishing shot. So, and I'm still not entirely sure how I'm gonna go with it. I was thinking just a shot where you just fly over, and basically flying over, but very close to the landmarks. For example, just close to the town hall like that.
Yeah.
Oh, also I even did the spiral house thingy here. Did you see in the white shots? I have no idea what the hell it's supposed to be. I was thinking maybe it's there that they store the grain, like they just go basically just kind of spiral to walk around, and they just dump all the grain there and keep it there for winter.
And it just exists in the town?
Yeah, like it exists. It has never been referred to, and that's pretty much it. There's also there is a windmill that is also a watermill for some reason.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the tricky part, and obviously I want it to look very, I want it to look good. It's just pretty tricky with 3D renders because 3D renders look, they're gonna look as good as the matte that it makes them. Like you can have very good textures, but the lighting and the distances, the perspective, it's all set in stone. You can cheat around it, but you have to do those cheats to make them good. In that case here, that model, that whole scene doesn't have any bouncing light because that's very expensive. Yeah, the whole thing, it's like 15 minutes a frame with the renderer. So I'm not even gonna try to do a render right now. Actually, I could.
Don't you have any renders already on your computer of it?
Well, the renderer is included with Maya, so yeah, but the basically when you go with the real-time preview, it's looking bad on purpose. Like There's no ray tracing. There's no. It's basically just the geometry with the right depth and the right texture on them. Their lighting is all fake. If there's any lighting at all, like if I enable the lighting, you're probably gonna see how bad it is. And for some scenes, I had to deal with that renderer. So you have the light from the sky that kind of works, but the light from the sky doesn't care about shadows, or it doesn't care about anything obscuring the light. The intensity is going to be wrong for a lot of them. The light doesn't bounce. I'm pretty sure yeah. Right now it's freaking out because of all the but you see a bit how all the shadows just don't make any sense.
Yeah.
They don't even have they basically extend to the infinite. Like the light is the same intensity over all the distance, unlike a real light, which is supposed to diminish with distance. Well, it's not exactly diminishing with distance. Is that with distance the light is gonna cover more surface, and as it covers more surface, it just feels like it's dimmer. But for example, if you were to shine a light from far away, if you had something like massive telescope, you could capture that light for longer. Well, for longer. Basically, you could capture more light, and then you'd see a bit better. And you could also get to capture for longer. For example, looking at you've seen those photos where you have lights from a city, and you just see all the lights from the cars just make streaks because of the long exposure. Basically, you can do that, but with something far away to try to get more light out of it. Or you can try to increase the sensitivity, but you're also going to get you're going to get something grainy because of the all the artifacts. Yeah, sensors for cameras are, they're good, but they have their limitations as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the whole thing with that scene, if I want to calculate light, that is kind of accurate. I say kind of because I disabled bouncing light. Basically, if you have a light source, for example, you have this light here that bounces of the wall, and it's going to bounce off the wall. So, for example, it's a white light that shines on something that's, I don't know, blue. The light is going to bounce, is going to be blue as well. If it's a red light that shines on something blue, it's going to be actually, you won't get any bouncing light because actually, will you? No, it's supposed to. It's probably going to be lighting purple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to get some very. It's going to look a bit weird with colored lights, but basically the fact that light bounces can bounce with a different color. And with render nowadays, for example, Arnold, V-Ray, Mantra, even Mental Ray, which has been discontinued. Well, although with Mental Ray you have to use a different GI, but that aspect is going to be taken care of. But it's going to take forever to render. So for that whole city, if I wanted bouncing lights, instead of taking 12 minutes per frame to calculate all the lights, it might take a half an hour, maybe more. And it's going to be grainy as well because of all the sampling.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not going to be as accurate. And for that Starlight Glimmer project, I want a good flyover of Ponyville. So every frame needs to be rendered. With Cantrelot, we didn't really have any flyover because it was basically just just a backdrop that I rendered once, painted over to look good. But I cannot paint over something in motion, so well I could, but the tools for that are pretty limited. Like if I paint over something, for example, I paint over that part here and then it moves, it's going to basically be obscured. It's kind of like spray painting something. Then you look at another angle and you see all the lines of the parts you missed. Basically that, but in 3D. Yeah, it's one of those challenges trying to work on that 3D model of Ponyville. There's the mountains as well. Like, you see all the parts that are separate. At the very end, I'm gonna need to find a way to make sure that they just merge, or at least that you don't see the seams. It's easier with some seams because the angle of the light or the objects in the middle. So I could just put trees in the seam and be done with it, or I could try to merge those two geometries and to remesh it to get rid of the seam. Yeah. It's one of those tricky parts. Oh, and there's nothing on the back. I think for the final one, what I was thinking of was to use, basically reuse some of the mountains I used back in the Fall of Sunset Shimmer. Basically, the whole mountains I had. Let's find a shot with mountains. A good shot. You see here in the mountains, it's actually just displacement maps with basically just some fractal noise, and then I just added some texture to get the top part to look like it had snow.
Yeah.
And basically just that noise really helped to feel like a mountain.
Ooh, you just got a super chat that said, hopefully you're having a good day, Minty.
I've been having a pretty good day. Well, I say a pretty good day. Besides the quarantine, which is pretty depressing when you think about it. Like, staying at home and just avoiding public as much as possible. Like, I'm mostly an introvert, but you know, I still need some people to talk to. Like, chatting with people is not the same thing as talking with people. Yeah. And I haven't seen my mom in over a month, so pretty sad. Yeah, although I don't want to put her at risk. Just trying to travel to my hometown would be impossible. They've been blocking they've been trying to block traffic from city to city. So yeah.
I see. Alright, well I gotta head out.
Alrighty. So be able to do those 18 more minutes alone, I guess. I'll be taking questions from the chat, I guess. Sounds good to you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll see you later then.
See ya. So yeah. Do you have any questions in the chat? Oh yeah, and when I was talking about clicking the ground could crash it, let's do a demonstration. And give it a moment. Yep, frozen. Now it should be crashing in a few seconds. The plushie was done by Cutie Pony. It's he's on, actually I think is a guy on DeviantArt. I got it as a gift boyfriend a while back, and I was really ashamed because my apartment at the time was so small I couldn't bring the plushie, so I kept it for more. Basically, I had to go to visit my mom, lend her the plushie for a few months while I was moving out, and she was really missing the plushie afterwards. If I'm gonna use 3D pony rigs for this animation? No. 3D pony rig, and it crashed. 3D pony rigs, the problem I have is if you look, for example, at SFM, the rigs in SFM are pretty good, but they're basically video game rigs. So you see the polygons when you look closely, and they're good, but they have limitations. So if you look, for example, it's not perfect, but with the fall of sunset shimmer, the rigs were kind of 2.5D, so I could actually have 3D rotations. And actually, let's find a shot for a better rotation. So that rig here, for example, it's kind of 2D. It looks 2D, but when you get the 3D head movement like that, it's much smoother than in the show because it's actually set in 3D. Let's open up. Actually, let's open up Toon Boom Harmony to show you something from. There we go. Luna. Yeah, Toon Boom actually allows for 3D elements. For example, so for example, if I have a 3D object, although the rendering is pretty limited, but you're gonna have it's very basic, like no lighting, you'll be fine. And yeah, I was kind of bad. I was kind of sad for BabsCon, although like I've been to BabsCon many years, so it was kind of a shame. But I was thinking, well, it happens. Back in 2014, I couldn't go to a single pony convention, and it was really sad. But then I realized, well, it's life. But yeah, that's the whole rig here. When you get those 3D movements, if I want to have a 3D, basically I want to rotate the whole rig in 3D. It's a bit tricky because it's not true 3D. So for example, you have the head that doesn't even rotate properly because it's like that. But I could, for example, just cheat. It's a separate body entirely, but the whole 3Q body, well, 3Q profile body is like that, and then I just rotate like this. Like this. Then I can just get rid of one of the layers. And there we go. It's not perfect, but for what I need, it's usually gonna do a good job. And yeah, Toon Boom is not even made for something like that. It's really tricky. Basically just cheating with 3D graph. No, it's not 3D graph. Perspective. And oh, right. And yeah, it's pretty much just very messy set of pieces. I had one of the things I added with the rig is that oh, and yeah, it's the actual view I have when I said the rig. For example, when I rotate the head, I actually have to move the head rotating peg like that to actually have some control. And if I want to move the eye, I have to move this thing. I have a lot of things. There's a front leg, the deformer, if I want to do the deformer. Although the deformer is pretty messy because I'm never using that deformer. If I want to change the leg to bend it, I have an image switch like that. Then I can just use the I key to get the and even the I key is kind of messy. Yeah. There's a lip sync as well, so if I want her to talk, I have a set. It's already a set of deformer mounts, but I go with this one. So it's basically I have the keys for the. But for example, if I want a different mount, it's all based on deformers. Deformer, selected deformer. This. Oh, and it's kind of interesting. The bottom lip and the jaw are connected. Basically, the idea is that since the jaw is supposed to move along with the mouth, which a lot of animators kind of ignore, which I can understand because the mouth itself kind of expensive, but I have that part here, so I basically just go with how the mouth itself would be moving, although those two parts here don't move with it, but since I don't have to worry too much about that, I can just go and move it like that. There's also how the top lip is connected to the muzzle piece. It's not really realistic, but the thing is that the upper lip is not supposed to move because it's mostly just a jaw and the so when you move the upper lip, you're not really gonna have well, actually, if I look at the movements, the top lip, except for the big smile, and even then with the big smile, it's not really realistic as well. Yeah, it's kind of set like that. It's oh, and the funny thing is that if you look at let me rotate it. If you look at the that part here with the muzzle, the line itself changes as I rotate, and it's not really a feature from Toon Boom. It's basically just me cheating. Basically, I have two pieces. I have that piece that is actually just piece like that, and then I have another piece that also moves. Basically, those two pieces are layered backwards. Selection. There we go. So you have those two pieces, but the composite is set in 2D. If I set it in 3D, I would actually get the opposite. Basically, you have the basically with composite, the order of the basically the order of the inputs is gonna say what is in front instead of being what is in front, really. And yeah, it's not realistic for that context, but since it's supposed to be a style with an outline, it's, you know, it's bound to happen. It's a lot of trickery. It's lots of it's not a perfect rig, but for the animation that I have, a lot of it is front views or side views. There's no actual back view like that. Like if you look at how the back view is, the rig actually breaks. So if I have a shot with a back view, I'm just gonna change the rig entirely. There's lots of head movements like that. The horn is pretty interesting because the horn actually rotates. It's mostly just designing the animation around what you have, but also designing what you have around what animation you want to tell. When I was working on the false sunset shimmer, I realized, well, it's mostly a drama about sunset shimmer, so I need a really good rig powder. I need a good set of mount for how to, because of the lip sync, and also because I wanted to have some good facial expressions. And just setting it with deformers really helped me to get some very interesting facial expressions. see the paint a bit better, to see, and also have one of the problems though is that lip sync is a bit too smooth in some cases because you really want some punch, but just the idea of having having that opportunity really helped. Yeah. So yeah, that's about it. I have 5 more minutes before the stream ends, so if you have any questions, let's go with it. Oh yeah, forget about it. There's also the blinks, which are also set on deformers. Really helps to have some smooth blinking as well. I'll show you the deformer itself. It's not perfect for Luna, but I usually just fix it for every shot. It's basically just the idea that the blink itself, instead of being frame by frame like I used to have with my flash rig, basically everything else set on the deformer, even the neck. Best advice for rigging, the rig itself I have here is pretty wild because there's a lot of weird features. Personally, I would go with something very simple at first, trying to at least get used to how to go with deformers with kinematic outputs, and how to deal with the node view, because a lot of it is just node views connected to other node views. Well, nodes connected to other nodes. A lot of I wouldn't recommend going with the master controller early, because I've tried the master controller and still barely get it. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's one. Yeah, learning Toon Boom is a bit more difficult than learning Flash, because there's a lot of things that you get in Flash that you don't get in Toon Boom. For example, symbols. The way Toon Boom handles symbols is really weird. You have drawing layers, but those drawing layers are more those drawing layers are more actually, you need to learn a bit how to use nodal software, kind of like Blender in Nuke, to get a better idea of how it works. But basically, you just have to think that everything you see is connected to display. So if you have a composite that just merges a lot of layers to that display, so everything that connects up like that is related. So everything is connected to that composite, including that composite for that body, including that composite for that wing, that composite for that wing. Get the belly line, the belly, which is also connected, and all the green connections are all connections for position. So let's put a peg between one of those connections. Like I put it here. If I move the peg, oh right, connecting it to something that doesn't. If I connect that peg and I just move that peg with that green connection, I just move that wing. Oh, and thank you for the donation, Bloody Sky. It's really, really helpful. Yeah, so yeah, get for example pegs like that. So everything that's green is a transformation. Everything that's blue is a position. So all those drawings, for example, if you connect a drawing like that to another with the green connection, you basically have a drawing that will change the position of another one. So For example, if you for example, the tail is a few drawings connected one to the other. So if I move this part, I'm gonna move all the other parts as well. Actually, you can even see with the color what you influence and all the yeah, kind of like segmented programming. It's a lot of things influence other things, and if you have to be careful. For example, the neck actually influences the head. So if you have a neck movement that somehow doesn't influence the head, I don't know, maybe a pony who breaks his neck, which is pretty dark. You have to, or for example, a rotation that doesn't actually influence the rest of the head. You have to think about it because it's connected. You might at some point have to reconnect the rig differently for a different kind of shot. It's really weird, to be honest. Oh yeah, my stream is finally over. I will have a stream next week where we'll talk more about animation. I think next week what I'm gonna do, next week it's gonna be on Saturday because, actually I'm not sure if I'm gonna go with Saturday or Sunday because of the quarantine. Basically all the stores are closed on Sunday, so I'm thinking maybe if I do a stream on Sunday, maybe, you know, that way I can do all my groceries the day before and won't have to worry too much about it. I'm not sure entirely. Really depends on how things are gonna happen. I'm gonna talk about it on Twitter by then. I also have another event as well with Mid-Aircon. Wait, am I calling it the right thing? Mid-Air Pony Fair. Yeah, it's another event, kind of like LooneyCon. It's basically I want to talk a bit more about animation. I will probably not do a view of. It's more of an interview type, but yeah, by then I should have more info. And yeah, a lot of people call Toon Boom Flash 2.0. It's kind of Flash 2.0 when you discover all the cool things you get out of it. And you also have cleaner lines, like the lines I had back with Flash. They were not as clean, like just those curves here. Just getting those pointy things was really different. Flash had really weird artifacts in the corners, so yeah, it's much cooler. So I thank you all for coming, and I'll see you in yeah, probably see you next week. Thank you.